If Hollywood has taught us anything, it's that disaster can strike at the worst of times, usually in the worst possible places and with alarming regularity. These disasters often involve plummeting several thousand feet from an airplane that's either malfunctioning, hijacked, or overrun with snakes, sometimes all three. But would it be possible to actually survive a plane crash? And if you could, what happens when you reach the ground? Let's talk about it. First of all, you'd have to be incredibly unlucky to experience a plane crash. According to a study carried out at the Wroclaw University of Technology, the odds of your plane crashing on the way to its destination are 1 in 2 million. You'd have to take that flight every day for the next 5,000 years before it becomes even slightly likely. Even if you were to crash, the National Transportation Safety Board have found that more than 95% of passengers involved in plane crashes actually survive. However, this statistic includes much more common minor crashes. A serious crash at full speed may not necessarily have such a positive outcome, but all the statistics in the world won't change the fact that plane crashes do happen, albeit rarely, and that is a very real source of fear for many a wary traveler, and rightly so. The ins and outs can vary largely from case to case, but in a worst-case scenario, a plane crash is going to leave you feeling more than a little sore. Commercial airplanes typically cruise around 575 miles per hour, and crashing at any speed even close to this amount is going to do some serious damage. The main issue is that, as the plane decelerates, your body continues to travel forward as the momentum carries you and every other loose object in the cabin. Even hitting water at a shallow angle will result in massive deceleration as the plane adjusts to its new, regrettably terrestrial surroundings. Your body has to decelerate too, pushing and pulling hard against whatever is in front of or around you. Most likely, your body will fly forward, pulling against your seatbelt hard enough to snap your spine. Your head, grown exceptionally heavy from an excess force of up to 12 Gs, according to a Channel 4 documentary, will slam into the seat in front, crushing your skull and breaking your neck. If you're really lucky and manage to survive the violent throw, you'll need to get ready to duck, as any loose luggage, trolleys, or even people will soon be hurled towards you. Even the chairs themselves may come loose. If, by some miracle, you do survive, your troubles are far from over. Fire, explosions, and at the very least smoke are all present and very real threats to your survival. And that's not to mention the threat of water, which, if you crash in the ocean, could be very quickly filling the cabin around you. Now, before you have a panic attack, and trust me, I'm on the verge myself, there are a few things you can do to help yourself. Firstly, and most importantly, remain calm. When the crash happens, your brain is going to enter fight or flight mode. If you don't take control in this time, you'll find yourself in a panic-fueled paralysis. Unable to move, think, and respond, this paralysis, a reaction to the intense shock and trauma, will kill you if the cabin fills with smoke, or worse, leave you cooked alive as the flames turn the cabin to an oven. Snapping out of confusion and acting quickly may allow you to exit the plane by whatever means necessary. If smoke has flooded the cabin, duck your head below the rising smoke and move fast. Smoke inhalation can quickly leave you unconscious or even dead. If possible, cover your mouth with dampened fabric of any kind to act as a gas mask. Wearing all cotton clothing with long sleeves and long pant legs will keep you much safer than synthetic fibers. Near flames, the latter will shrink, melting onto your skin. The burns from synthetic fibers will be severe enough to kill you, and you won't be able to remove them once they fuse to your skin. Believe it or not, your choice of seat can also influence your likelihood of survival. The forces acting on an airplane in a crash decrease near the rear of the plane. A 2007 study carried out by Popular Mechanics found that, while survival rates at the front of an airplane in a crash were 49%, those towards the back were as high as 69%. You'll also need to count how many seats are between you and the nearest exit. Counting these before takeoff can save your life in the event that the smoke obscures your ability to see the exits. With all this in mind, and after a thorough read of the in-flight safety guide provided by the airline, yeah, I know it's boring compared to the new Avengers on your in-flight TV, all you can hope to do is brace yourself for the impact. Protecting your head, spreading your weight out, making sure your seatbelt is tight, and keeping your torso as low as possible, you may be able to minimize the damage on your body. These methods may seem far-fetched, what with the whole fiery explosions, insane G-force, and general sense of hopeless despair, but stick around till the end and I'll prove to you that these methods can and have saved lives. They could save you, so brace yourself. The dust clears. What now? Ben Sherwood, author of The Survivors Club, asserts that 80% of all plane crashes occur during the 3 minutes after takeoff or in the 8 minutes before landing. These are the times when things tend to go wrong, often involving the landing or takeoff procedures themselves. But let's say you're one of the unlucky few who go down further out in the middle of nowhere and you survive. What happens next? Usually, when a plane crashes, the hard impact would trigger the emergency locator transmitter to send out a distress signal so the outside world can rescue you. However, as we've seen with cases like MH370, this technology is limited as there they rely on satellites, often with poor reception. So although your best bet is to usually stay with the aircraft, as you'll see, sometimes this isn't always the case. Wherever your plane crashes, your first priority always needs to be formulating a plan. Focus on finding access to water, food, shelter, fire, and signaling capability. Depending on the severity of the crash, some, if not all, of these things may be salvageable from the remains of the plane. But let's imagine for a moment that the plane is no longer available. You've crashed into the sea, salty water has flooded the cabin, and you've just managed to escape to the surface without drowning. Your first priority should be finding a life raft, or at the very least, something you can float on. This will help you to conserve energy and get dry. Stay near the aircraft if it's still afloat, as this will help search parties spot you. Rafts also attract curious birds and fish, which could become your main food source if you can't salvage any supplies from the plane. Rafts are also useful in the unlikely event that predators of the sea come a-knockin'. While your chances of being hunted are minuscule, if sharks detect blood in the water, an instinctive feeding frenzy may occur. The likelihood is that the crash has left you bleeding, so you may find yourself being nudged by a hungry sea creature. Get out of the water as quickly as possible, and unless you've been fortunate enough to drop into the coastal shores of the Indian Ocean, you'll soon be exhausted and shivering. To conserve energy and reduce heat loss, particularly if you're without a raft, remain as still as possible and float. Your only hope now is that a passing boat or plane spots you. Conservation and a wise use of your energy reserves are of equal importance in our next crash site, a snowy mountain climate. Cold is even more of a threat here than in the ocean, so shelter is a priority. Ideally, you may be able to use the fuselage from the airplane or parts of it as a makeshift shelter from the elements. If possible, once any flames have died down, venture into the wreck and fashion warmer clothing out of material from the plane's seats. If neither of these are an option, snow can be used to form a shelter, as its high air content makes it a great insulator. You can eat snow too for hydration, but only if you're moving and active enough to stop it from making your hypothermia even worse. But don't get too active. Excessive exertion can make you sweat, and not only will this dehydrate you, it'll also make you colder. The cold weather will mean your body burns more calories to sustain itself, so you'll need to find food fast, and preferably foods high in carbohydrates, as carbs require less oxygen to digest than fats or proteins. And oxygen is something you'll need to bear in mind, as altitude sickness in mountainous terrain can leave you incapacitated. If you have to leave your location, move slowly to minimize the effects. If you're unlucky enough to crash in a desert, you'll be faced with severe dehydration, intolerable daytime heat, and freezing cold nights. Unless you're absolutely certain you can make it to a settlement under cover of darkness, do not leave the crash site. Parts of the plane may be able to provide you with shade, and there may even be salvageable food and water inside. If not, your hydration needs to be a priority. Despite urban legends, don't drink the juice from any cacti you find. Many of these will at best leave you even more dehydrated from diarrhea, and at worst, poison you. Look for damp ground or dry riverbeds and dig holes to search for groundwater. You'd best choose carefully though, because digging is tiring and you'll run out of energy fast. If you manage to find a water source and you have no way of filtering it, you're best off drinking it anyway if you're on the brink of death. If help is going to come, it'll be sooner rather than later, so the gamble may be worth it. Your chances of survival are a lot better in more temperate climates like forested regions. Here, you'll be able to take shelter under trees, use the branches to fashion tools, and even start fires. Keep an eye out for animals and birds, which aside from being potential food, are good indicators of nearby water sources. If you find a river and follow it along, you may even be able to find a settlement. But those tips are all hypothetical, right? No one's actually done any of that. Wrong. One of the craziest survival stories of all time is that of Julian Kupka, whose plane was struck by lightning on its way to Pucallpa, Peru on December 24th, 1971. As lightning struck, the plane disintegrated and Julian fell, still trapped in her seat, 2 miles down into the Amazon rainforest. Amazingly, she survived, and with a broken collarbone, a laceration on her arm, and her right eye closed from swelling. She followed a stream through the jungle, which led to her eventual rescue 9 days later. So if you ever find yourself in a similar scenario, as a general rule of thumb, do what she did. Look for a flowing water source and follow it downstream. Not only will it keep you hydrated, it should lead you to civilization. Most settlements are positioned on ground level next to rivers and streams, so it's generally your best bet. Unless you're in Africa, as rivers there often end in the middle of nowhere. Now we take to the waves with the tale of Bahia Bakari, the Miracle Girl. On June 30th, 2009, a flight bound for the Comoros crashed in the ocean a mere 9 miles from its destination. All but one of the 152 passengers on board were killed, leaving 14-year-old Bahia alone, clinging to a piece of the plane. The decision to find a float rather than swim for land saved her life, and she was rescued 9 hours later. Historically, crashes on land have had similarly devastating death tolls, particularly in the desert. In the Second World War, Noel Samalan Jules, a South African flight mechanic, found himself himself stranded following a routine reconnaissance mission in the Kufr Desert in Libya alongside the other 12 airmen in his squad. Expecting to be rescued quickly, the men drank 75 liters of water between them in the first day, which soon left them facing severe dehydration. With no supplies and nothing to drink or cool them down except the alcohol in their compasses, which severely sickened those who drank it, everyone but Jules died before the rescue finally arrived. Jules' story shows the dangers of not working intelligently as a team in situations like these. Rationing water properly is often the difference between life and death. The story of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 in 1972 is the opposite. Although their radio transmissions were received by search and rescue teams, they landed on such a remote mountain range covered in snow that search parties couldn't spot the aircraft from the air. After the devastating crash left 28 out of the 45 passengers stranded deep in the Andes, survivors soon ran out of food, but pulled together in the most difficult decision they would ever make. They agreed to eat the bodies of their dead fellow passengers. While none escaped the disturbing affair without deep physical and psychological wounds, their rational choice kept them alive for over 70 days and fueled an exploration mission out into the snowy wastes, trekking nearly 40 miles to eventual rescue. Surviving and fashioning materials and tools like a sleeping bag made from the airplane's insulation, the group's intuitive focus led to the eventual rescue of 16 survivors. Despite incredible difficulties and slim chance of survival after horrendous crashes, these people, and surprisingly many more, have demonstrated that surviving in the middle of nowhere after a plane crash is indeed possible. You'll need to keep your wits about you though and prepare to do things you thought you were never capable of. What methods would you use to survive in the middle of nowhere? Would you give up hope or keep pushing till your last breath? Let me know in the comment section down below, and thanks for watching.